And good morning, everybody. Welcome to a 2025 edition of Bury Your Bookie. I'm Jeff DeForrest. Very happy to have you guys with us for what we hope is going to be. I hope everybody got out at the tail end of 2024. I don't know that it was easy, especially with this Fugazi week we just experienced of NFL football, where you're trying to figure out who the fuck is actually involved in trying to win a ball game here. And it was disastrous on many fronts for a lot of people and for teams as well, including the New England Patriots, who, after handpicking Gerard Mayo many years ago to be the heir apparent to and the coach in waiting, it was kind of a Jimbo Fisher, Bobby Bowden thing back in the day at FSU. At least Jimbo managed before he went south to win one national championship. But Bobby Bowden had to be rolling over in his grave thinking about how we let the team go into total disarray and then defected and took the money to move on to Texas A&M. In this case, Mayo designated years ago to be the replacement whenever Bill Belichick decided to hang up his cleats there in his chalkboard. And of course, he gets one season. The team is in a position to get the number one pick. And lo and behold, he goes out and fucks them completely, maybe knowing that his name had already been peeled off the locker at halftime, and guides the Patriots to a win, which cost them their chance to pick number one overall, which might have been the lone salvation for what otherwise, outside of the belief that Drake may be a very good quarterback for years to come. It wasn't really much to write home about for the Patriots. And if you were around last night and you were watching Sam Darnold, wow, Cinderella story, Sam Darnold. Horrible years in New York. Then he's a vagabond. He's like a carpetbagger rolling around the league there in backup roles, sniffs the field once in a while, and doesn't necessarily distinguish himself, and yet finds himself starting in Minnesota. And lo and behold, as his magical season, 14-2, until, and people, bettors that had backed Minnesota last night will be having nightmares about Sam Darnold's passes sailing over Jefferson's head and any number of wide-open wide receivers. They go 0 for 4, scoring touchdowns in the so-called red zone. But this was deep into the red zone. And the passes were atrocious. Now, I know he was under immense pressure there. They were coming after this guy. Detroit was like no tomorrow. And where are they getting these players from, huh? Everybody on their defense is on injured reserve, and yet they're still attacking like they were the second coming of the Purple People Eaters, ironically, going against the Minnesota Vikings last night. So that game was of significance, and it was a great way to end up what otherwise was kind of a mashugana day in the NFL. We'll get into that, and of course, it's Black Monday as well, and we have big storylines here. Who would want to leave Miami? Who in their right mind? It's 80 degrees here today. I woke up early in the morning out of habit from doing morning drive radio for so many years. You wake up at 2 in the morning and go, oh, fuck, I overslept. Then you realize, oh, good, I can go back to bed for like another 3 hours. And so it becomes habitual, and it's something I haven't been able to shake. So I'm looking at the news about 2 in the morning, and I'm looking at the weather around the country, and you're thinking to yourself, who the fuck would want to leave Miami? But all of our superstars won out. We'll get into that. If you are betting, and we hope that you're betting and winning, BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they transpire as well. So you get action on the games, you're watching the games, you're yelling, you're screaming, you're whooping it up, you're having a good time. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, and college basketball, NHL hockey, is Ovechkin going to do it? Surpass Gretzky? Maybe you got a prop on that. College hoops, of course, UFC. You can bet all those fights. You can bet the hockey fights probably on BetOnline. They take action, as I said, on virtually anything. Head to BetOnline today, and don't forget to use the promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV. That's all capital letters, BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, the playoffs are set. It's also Black Monday. And I don't know, is it like being in a Deadpool? I had mixed feelings about being in a Deadpool because you don't want to be walking around rooting for some guy to pass away. It's crazy. And Deadpools are never one in that fashion where it's the person, not to disparage the memory of what everybody considers to be a great humanitarian. He proved to be that in his post-presidential years. Jimmy Carter, he just checked out. Now, if you had Jimmy Carter in a Deadpool and you drew him a year ago, Who figures a guy is going to go a year in hospice? Now, he may have looked like a fossil. And I don't mean to be insensitive. See, this is what happens. Well, when you're gambling, you have to detach yourself from what normally would be considered standard human ethics and morality. And I don't know. I mean, do you get to the point there where you're actually rooting for some guy's passing? I would always draw the names of guys that I really admired also. Like all of a sudden you got Tommy Lasorda in a Deadpool. What are you going to do? You're going to hope that he gets hit by a truck? I had a friend, and he had two guys in a Deadpool. They were drawing two names, and the pool had advanced to about, I don't know, maybe 50 grand was going to be the takeaway for somebody who had the winning entry in this thing. So he had two names. He had Whitey Ford, and he had Peter Graves. Peter Graves, the actor from Mission Impossible. So I'm at the track. You'll find that a little bit surprising. And I run into a guy who was always kind of partying with celebrities and things like that. He was a well-known guy around town. And he says, hey, you know what? I just got back from playing golf with Whitey Ford. And my friend was bitching because he was stuck in this Deadpool for like a year and a half. It was $100 a month. He really didn't want to do it. He had already invested about $1,500 in this thing, and he saw himself with no shot. So my friend Johnny says he played golf with Whitey Ford, and I said, well, how's he looking? He says he looks great, man. He guzzles a couple of goblets of red wine, goes out there, shoots an 87, and seems like he's going as strongly as ever. Like an asshole, I call my friend and say, hey, I got a guy here. He just played, I know you said you had Whitey Ford in the Deadpool. He just played golf with the guy. He says he couldn't be any better. You're hoping he looks like the English patient, and Ford is looking great. So my buddy is a little bit cynical anyway. He calls me a fucking jerk and hangs up on me. And sure enough, the next day I go out to my driveway and I pick up the paper, and I see on the first page, Peter Graves shockingly checks out. The guy ended up winning the poll. He got the money just before the mob closed in, and the DEA, was all over these guys, thinking they were laundering drug money, which they may well have been as a side business. So he did get his 48,000. But is it something? I mean, can you be detached from any kind of emotional? What would you call it? Accountability. If you're in a Deadpool. And that's the weird thing about this whole Black Monday. Where are you really rooting for guys to lose their job? And can you bet on that? I'm thinking people will. Already, while we were doing another show earlier this morning, and speculation was pretty favorable to the idea that Doug Peterson was not coming back as the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. And outside of the money, who would want to be the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars? A dreadfully poorly organized franchise that is destined to just suck forever. Jacksonville's not even a city that you would want to live in. My brother lives there. He loves it. Okay. But he's a man of means and probably is living in a, pretty well, what would it be? Well endowed area of town. Other than that, it's a fucking armpit, man. It's the armpit of Florida before it runs into Georgia, where you really have some unbelievable hillbillies. But the Jacksonville Jaguar franchise has been just an abomination for so many years now. They don't even want to play in Jacksonville. They want to move to Toronto. They want to move to London. And so getting fired, getting canned there as their head coach. What did Peterson have? 3 years? 22 and 38. No, more than that, huh? 22 and 38. So he's already gonzo, a victim of Black Monday. Speculation running around about Mike McCarthy. I don't see Jerry firing the guy, do you? Mike McCarthy? Now, his record certainly wouldn't indicate that the guy was about to get canned. He's 49 and 34 with the Dallas Cowboys. He's had his share of mishaps with injuries. Dak Prescott may not be all that people thought he should be, and the old U.S. Army thing, and at the same time, he's been hurt. So McCarthy did he not have 3 consecutive 12-win seasons? And this guy's a candidate for being fired. We'll see what happens, but I'm going to say he sticks. Brian Daboll, he fell victim with the New York Giants. He fell victim to one of our favorite pieces of analysis. This has nothing to do with analytics or sabermetrics or any of the numerology that people depend on now. Strictly the fat man theory that when a coach is fat and has success, he should never lose weight. And when he does, often the mojo goes right out the window with it. Witness Rex Ryan loses a bunch of weight, gets the stomach staple or whatever he did to bring about this dramatic change in his physical appearance. And the next thing you know, he can't do shit. The Jets have a losing record a couple of years in a row. He gets fired. He goes to Buffalo. That's a disaster. He's a commentator and supposedly is a candidate to be a head coach again. I happen to like Rex because at least he had a little bit of style. He wasn't one of these and the bravado people, old school guys especially, are a little bit sensitive to that. Oh, he's a bragging piece of shit. Back it up somehow. But at least it was entertaining. The Jets, a dreadful franchise, another one. Their last big game was in 1969. Except they managed to beat the Miami Dolphins. But Dayball seems to be well liked in New York. I don't know that anybody wants to see this guy get fired. But once he lost the weight, the team fell apart. So did his coaching acumen. Apparently, 18-32 with the New York Giants. I'm going to say he comes back though. The Raiders and Antonio Pierce, they may part ways. Came in, nice story, interim coach, infused a little bit of enthusiasm and a little life into the Raiders at the time. Since then, it hasn't been all that pretty. This year, an ugly mess. 9-17. Antonio Pierce, I'm going to say Gonzo. And the Titans, of course, have to be thrown in there because they are the Titans. Brian Callahan, 3-14 this year, just a one-year prop. Gerard Mayo already got the axe on. Didn't even make it to Monday. But what was beautiful, and this is kind of wild what's happening here, because if you look around the country, I mentioned, sleep interruptus, a common habit of somebody that was used to getting up in the morning and doing radio shows. So I'm seeing this blanket storm that is annihilating the Midwest right now, and you're asking yourself, who in their right fucking mind would want to leave Florida to go and be involved in this kind of environment where pretty soon you're going to have to lean on maybe eating the flesh of others just to survive. I mean, it looked like a scene out of the movie Alive. You crashed a plane into the Andes Mountains, and it's all you can do. Where it's like, well, he's been dead. I don't know what's the harm in it. So, anyway, and yet here, this was the big story that transpired yesterday, and it shows you how certain franchises are just destined to repeat the consistent disappointment and failure. We mentioned Jacksonville; they would be the lead or among the leaders in that category in the National Football League. For many years, it was Detroit until they decided to go with Dan Campbell, who, what did he do? He ate like a live boar right in front of the ownership to show his motivation for being a head coach and his passion for it. And it's working, man. Detroit looks like, they certainly cast themselves into a very favorable position last night by shellacking the Minnesota Vikings. As we said, Sam Darnold was like Christopher Cross, sailing away. But yeah, I mean, when you look at the whole coaching carousel that's going to be taking place here in the National Football League, Peterson already gone. We don't know about McCarthy. I'm not sure. Dayball, I think, is going to survive. Like I said, Pierce probably leaves an opening in Las Vegas, and I don't know that the Titans would fire a guy after 1 year like the Patriots did. So you have four jobs that were open. The Jets fired Robert Saleh, and Ulbrich didn't distinguish himself enough to even make you think he was going to get a sniff at the head coaching position. The Saints, they had let go on Dennis Allen a while ago. Looked like they were going to be in the market for a new head coach. The Bears, Eberfluss, disaster and exacerbated by that ridiculous coaching decision not to call a timeout, and the Bears losing games in almost unfathomable fashion all year long under this guy, all based on poor game management, clock management, and really bad coaching decisions. So he was going to get the axe at the end of the year, if not sooner. The Bears never do that. They did it this time. Have an opening there. And of course, the Patriots' job is open as well. When did Mike Vrabel, when did he become the second coming of Vince Lombardi? Nothing against the guy. He may get one of these jobs and do a very nice job. Obviously, inside track, you would have to think, with his longtime affiliation as a great player with the New England Patriots, and it just didn't work out with Mayo, who had an affiliation with the Patriots and a relationship with him for a long period of time as a player and an assistant coach. I don't know what made Mike Vrabel all of a sudden. It's being glorified by your absence. He's doing nothing the last couple of years. He was a consultant with the Browns, which that in and of itself would be enough of a scathing indictment to make you think that the last guy that you wanted coaching your team was Mike Vrabel. His last couple of years, I mean, he made the playoffs in 3 of 6 years with the Tennessee Titans. We see that the Titans are a mess, so could you blame Vrabel if he was involved in personnel decisions for leaving them in a situation where they were at the absolute bottom of the talent pool? And yet, because he hasn't been coaching for a while, all of a sudden, this guy's like the favorite son. Everybody wants Mike Vrabel. It's pretty incredible. So I don't know where it splits off after that, but that'll be an interesting thing to watch, the coaching carousel in the National Football League, and may have some impact on your future wagers. All right, so here's what we have. We have the playoffs coming up, and the lineup is set. The odds are already in place. These games are going to transpire over the next weekend. I believe there's even a game on Monday night, a week from today, as part of the playoff package. 14 teams all together make the playoffs. 2 of them get byes. That turned out to be Kansas City. In the AFC, the Detroit Lions won that opportunity to get the bye week and then host home playoff games. And the remaining 2 games they would have to take to make their way into the Super Bowl, a place where many people feel they should have been last year, except for the machismo, the bravado of one Dan Alita Wild Boar in an interview, Campbell, who continues to use the same philosophy, and every time you're tuning in and thinking, what an idiot, he should kick the field goal, they end up scoring a touchdown. So if it's working, why fuck with it, right? I mean, you don't need to mess with the wiring. It's holding together right now. So just continue hammering away with this approach, and it's working. Detroit looks really, really good, and they seem to rally around the idea that our coach is going to go for 4th and 4. A 4th and goal from the 4-yard line or whatever, almost as a matter of routine. He's not going to submit and just go ahead and take a field goal opportunity there. Now, sometimes it comes back to haunt you. It could have early in the game. The Vikings tried to show that same presence that, okay, we're going to go for it. And it cost them a chance at 3 points early in the game when the game was teetering back and forth. That looked like it was a lame decision. But later on, it turned into a blowout anyway, as Detroit rattled off 21 unanswered. And as we said, opened some large question marks about whether or not Sam Darnold, under this kind of heat, is capable of continuing that, as we mentioned, Cinderella ride that he was on with the Minnesota Vikings. So here are the matchups. You have the L.A. Chargers at Houston. L.A. Chargers at Houston. Chargers favored on the road against a Houston Texans team that looked like it was coming back to the pack. It wasn't overwhelmingly impressive in the second half of the season. Certainly was not as impressive throughout the year as they were last year with C.J. Stroud, who also appeared maybe to have the Sports Illustrated sophomore jinx, where he wasn't nearly as effective as he was in his rookie season when he lit it up and made you think, my God, how did this guy go number 2 overall in the draft? And ironically, Bryce Young, who was given up for dead, I mean, a nicer version without the problems of Jamarcus Russell, but just as big of a bust. And Bryce Young then now has come back as a number 1 overall pick in that draft and distinguished himself to the point where you're thinking, okay, maybe he's not on our all Dolly Parton team as one of the biggest busts in draft history. There's some life there. Chargers, a great season. It shows you that Jim Harbaugh, certainly in his first year with any spot that he's been in his first year, he always shows dramatic improvement. We saw a growth from Justin Herbert at the quarterback position. He was a different sort of guy this year, not as inclined to making mistakes as he has been in the past. A marvelous talent who Miami Dolphin fans probably looking at it now. And this was always a big debate. Should the Dolphins have taken Justin Herbert instead of Tua? That was a 5 and a 6 in that particular year's draft. Tua taken 5th, Herbert going 6th. And it was one of those deals where you had in Miami another example where Chris Bosh ended up being the number 4 pick by the Toronto Raptors in a draft, and he got Dwayne Wade. Both Hall of Famers, yes, but who would you say had more impact on the franchise that he played for predominantly throughout his career? Clearly, it was the great Dwayne Wade. Not so good of a quiz show host, but Was a hell of a basketball player. All right, so what do we do with this game? I'm inclined to go ahead, even though it's on the road. I think the Chargers have been more impressive. Houston has sort of been fading in the last couple of weeks, and life and death to get there. So Chargers minus 2.5. That would be my initial inclination. The Ravens are laying 8.5 against another team that really went into the tank towards the end of the season. And we mentioned this. Is it possible to have a Cinderella season in the black and blue division? Not really. Okay, so Pittsburgh and under Mike Tomlin, you thought, how does this guy do it? He's doing it with a bunch of bag ladies by NFL standards. Yes, they have a couple of players that stand out, but he was really manufacturing shit to get wins with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But they have not necessarily been able to perpetuate that and keep it going. Towards the end of the year, they finished up losing, like 4 of their last 5 games, something like that? I don't know. I'll get the exact number. Anyway, they would appear to be very much in the crosshairs of the Baltimore Ravens, who hate them like poison. It's a rivalry game. Can the Steelers be within 8.5? That's a lot to lay. Ravens have been clobbering people, as they did yesterday, or I guess Saturday they played that game where they played the lowly Browns, weren't going to offer much resistance, but managed to cover a 20-point spread, which you had to have some concerns about that. Anytime you're laying double digits in the NFL, much less double digits with a crooked number at the start, laying 20. But they did cover that point spread. Can they cover 8.5 against Pittsburgh? I mean, there's always a natural inclination to think, yes, the chalk will prevail. I would imagine they win the game, and that'll be interesting to see if there's any development on that line one way or the other. I don't imagine that's going to move too much. And Denver earned the distinction yesterday with the shellacking of the backups from the Kansas City Chiefs, that they earned the distinction of being able to go on the road and play Buffalo, which if that mess of snow that's in the Midwest right now, paralyzing the Midwest, if that somehow hovers around, which has a tendency to happen in upstate New York, I haven't gone to Syracuse University, I can assure you that it is one of the coldest motherfucking places that you'll ever go in your lifetime. Siberia be damned. If Solzhenitsyn had been in Syracuse, he would have gone ahead and confessed that he was against the state long before he did. In the Gulag Archipelago there, and he definitely would have deferred to the fact that the weather sucks. Denver should be used to it. I mean, they're certainly used to cold. They have the stamina for playing in a mile-high city. Can they be within 7.5 of the Buffalo Bills, who you would think would have massive doses of motivation because of their previous playoff failures? The Buffalo Bills in an excellent position here to move on, because it's the winner of the Chargers-Houston game that gets KC in the second round of the postseason of the wild card playoffs. All right, in the NFC, Minnesota loses out and they could have been in a pretty good position, but they coughed a bit, spit the bit yesterday and last night in that game against Detroit. So they now have to go on the road and face the Los Angeles Rams and Sean McVay. Minnesota, can they find a way? Is it like Shula's grandson, the defensive coordinator for the Rams? I want to say yes. Is it Chris Shula? He has to find a way to diffuse, and we saw this yesterday, put massive amounts of pressure on Sam Darnold, and his accuracy went out the window in that ball game, late in the ball game, even early in the game. He was firing balls under incredible pressure, and it was scattering it all over the place. He looked like Mitch Williams, the Wild Thing, for a while in there, after having, as we said, this standout season. So Minnesota going on the road, favored by 2.5 against the LA Rams. Interesting. Might be inclined there to go with the upset, but the Rams not highly regarded going into the playoffs, although they get the home game by courtesy of being their division winners. Washington has to go on the road against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay, a very suspect effort yesterday against a New Orleans Saints team that is absolutely horrendous. Talk about being on the ropes all season long. The Saints were horrible. Tampa Bay laying only 3 points in that game against the Washington Commanders, who also were one of the real bright spots all year long. Started to come back to the pack a little bit and showed a lot more vulnerability late in the season in the second half. But Washington definitely in there with a shot, I think, against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Baker Mayfield, who wrote a pretty good story for himself. And then finally, you have Green Bay And they're going to be getting 3 and a hook against the Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles well rested for this game. The status of Jalen Hurts obviously will be a consideration, as the Eagles laying 3.5 would not seem too prohibitive in terms of going ahead and embracing them with confidence against a Green Bay team that had its ups and downs also in the last quarter of the season. So your first instinct would be to think that at home Philadelphia looks like a pretty solid play there. Well, we'll see if that line fluctuates much, but obviously highly contingent on whatever the status is of Jalen Hurts, who was in concussion protocol with the Philadelphia Eagles. And how do you know when your concussion has gone away? I don't know. How many fingers am I holding up, right? Come on, champ. Get out there. One more round. Is that how they test it? I don't know. And then, of course, we've got the college playoffs continuing with the semifinals. And Ohio State favored by that line's moved slightly towards towards people taking Texas. Texas didn't impress me towards the end of the year. I don't know about you guys, but Texas looked. You talk about suspect and vulnerable. They certainly looked every bit of that. Ohio State overwhelmingly impressive in their 2 college football playoff games so far, as they shellacked Tennessee and embarrassed what was considered to be a very good team, a team that a lot of people felt would not only cover the 7.5 points they were being accorded in that game against Ohio State, but possibly win the game outright. Talk about being dead wrong, man. I mean, that's a big dagger right in your back, a flaming arrow going right in your back. Ohio State then equally impressive in annihilating Oregon. I'm thinking that they prevail there. Would you lay the 5.5? Surprising to me that Texas got the early dose of capital in this wagering prospect. So, but Ohio State looking pretty impressive. Are we going with too much chalk here? I'm starting to get that milk of magnesia feeling. We'll have to wait and see on the point spread on that game. But your first instinct, I think, would be to believe that Ohio State would continue this role. Ryan Day couldn't be that stupid, could he? To go back into like a dogfight like he tried to do against Michigan. I mean, the one thing that Michigan could do was bottle up their run and stay with him in that aspect. And the guy decides, I mean, it was just like when Sugar Ray Leonard decided to slug it out with the great Roberto Duran in that fight in Montreal, the first fight. You're going Macho Man against the ultimate Macho Man. It's not happening. So, in a drastic departure from his usual tactics, which were more than good enough to be competitive and win that fight, he goes and plays the other man's game. And that's what Ryan Day did in the Michigan game. But since that time, he realized, wow, I might have the 2 best receivers in the country here. Why don't I throw the ball? And so he's been doing that, and they've been putting up big numbers. The over-under in that game is 53 and a hook. So, suspecting a little bit of a shootout, the odds makers are. And Notre Dame and Penn State, man, that's a toss-up to me. I don't know how you guys feel about that. We'll get some of our experts on that game throughout the week, as we'll be joined by our usual assortment of handicappers in the next few days. But, wow, Penn State and Notre Dame. Notre Dame kind of finessed its way in. I love Riley Leonard, quarterback, competitive kid. I could live without all of the Jesus references. That's fine. But, maybe just spare us a little bit there of that. If he really believes it, great. But seems like a really good kid. I mean, he's one of those guys, as much as I despise Notre Dame, we've mentioned many times, we were kicked out of the movie theater for screaming that Rudy was offsides. Throw the flag! And as much as I root against Notre Dame, I loved it when Jimmy Johnson was pouring it on Jerry Faust and Aaron Parsegian was puking in the booth, spitting up pea soup all over Brent Musburger's suit. They're running up to score. They're running up to score. Like Aaron never did it. This Riley Leonard is a completely likable guy, and as is Marcus Freeman, seems like a stand-up guy. I don't know. Are there any kind of assertions against him? No, they got nothing. A clean record. The guy may as well be touchdown Jesus. So a good story. Nice to see in its own way, even if you despise Notre Dame because of the people that are involved. They give off a pretty good vibe. Penn State, don't you get the feeling? I mean, it didn't work. The theory didn't work with Georgia, but Georgia was so badly compromised by having to go with a backup quarterback. Carson Beck drew his share of criticism throughout the year as maybe not being as well regarded as he had been touted. But this backup quarterback was lost in space, man. It looked like the Miami Dolphins backup quarterbacks. Horrendous. I mean, just totally incompetent and not ready for the moment in any way, shape, or form. And so they really had no chance. Georgia kind of hung in that game for a while. But Notre Dame ultimately emerged. Can they beat Penn State? Because I think the same theory would apply, wouldn't it? Big tough guys from Penn State should roll over the finesse that's being displayed by the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I'd be inclined to take the point and a half with Penn State, thinking that game's more of a toss-up than people are making it out to be. So we'll get into all of that throughout the week, and I hope you guys had a very successful close to 2024 and off to a rocking start here in 2025. I happen to have a good session out at the racetrack on Saturday, so that's an encouraging sign. Can it continue? Please, gods of gambling, just give me to the end of January so I can get even for what was a somewhat slow and negative financial year last year. All right, great being with you. Thanks so much for the people at BetOnline and NoFilter.net. I'm Jeff DeForrest and Greenlight Ventures, of course, welcoming a sponsor here to the program. We will keep you posted all throughout the week on what's happening with the Lions and the movement here in football. And, of course, we'll be transitioning into much heavier concentration on basketball and pucks and some of the other things that are going on to occupy our time. Because has it gotten this way for degenerate gambling? I'm not sure, because people are betting on virtually everything. But it used to be that the NFL was viewed as just a diversion, a pleasant diversion to occupy your time between the last game of the World Series, when baseball was America's pastime, and when pitchers and catchers reported in February. What we're going to use to bridge the gap, that would be football. But now it seems like some of these other sports are just there because the people already are on countdown from the seconds after the Super Bowl has been concluded and their tickets go up in smoke. They're already in a countdown. Well, it's only another 128 days till training camp's open. And then, of course, people get all psychotic about the draft as well. A lot of non-athletic events that end up being big things, big promotions, because the thirst is there to bet on this action. All right, hopefully we'll be able to help you. We'll have Scotty M with us tomorrow. Troy West joins us on Wednesday. He's been on fire. Mike Jones on Thursday, and the professor should be with us with a college football playoff preview and analysis. One of the games, I guess, is Thursday night in the Cotton Bowl. So is that the Cotton Bowl or the Orange Bowl? One of them's Thursday night. The other one, I think, takes place on Friday. All right, we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. See you next time. I'm Jeff DeForrest. See you on the next edition of Bury Your Bookie.